I'm in the mood to do a get ready with me video. I don't have anything super interesting to talk about, at least nothing makeup related. And then I remembered this video that Amy from Amy Loves Makeup did a couple months ago, where she did a get ready with me and she talked about the books that she's read lately and kind of just gave a mini review of each of them. I don't pretend to be the most well-read person, but I did join a book club, and that's given me the opportunity to read a lot of books from genres that maybe I don't know much about, or I would have never really thought to pick up a book from on my own. And yeah, I have a few newer makeup products to me, so there might be a few first impressions in here or just mini reviews of things. I have the new Skyfire palette from What's on Beauty. I have worn this a few times. I have some thoughts, but I also wanted to create a look on camera. You'll have to forgive me if my delivery is a bit clumsy. I haven't done a video like this before, I don't think. I'll have all the makeup products I'm using listed in the description box, and I will do my best not to give any spoilers for these books, just kind of my general thoughts about them. The very first one is My Friends by Frederick Bachman. This was a book club recommendation, so I read this with the other girls. This book is long. It's 448 pages, and it's the kind of story that moves back and forth in time and tells mini stories about each character. That started getting kind of frustrating for me because it kept alluding to this big event, and it would get right up to being about to tell the story of what happened, and then it would completely switch gears. And I understand that that is like a storytelling technique, and of course you don't want to just give the entire story away right away, but the author did that probably 6 times, if not more. And like I said, I was reading this with other friends, and one of the girls in the club finished it earlier than I did, so she already knew what happened, and I would text her every time it happened or send a voice note or something, and every time I would just be even more frustrated. That is likely more just me having maybe a shorter attention span or just being an impatient person in general. There were a lot of genuinely beautiful moments in there. It's a story about friendship, and there were a lot of points in time where I was reading it and genuinely tearing up. Again, I think I'm just not a very patient person, and most people wouldn't have minded it, but it just kind of felt like the author was like toying with you or playing a game with you, and I just didn't really like that. Another book I read with the club is a book called Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. It's kind of like a historical fiction book. There is a romance element to it, but I don't know if it's necessarily like a romance novel. I like historical fiction, so this was much more up my alley. It's set in the 80s, and it's about one of the first women training to be a NASA astronaut. It was one of those books that opens up a lot of dialogue, and so our club talked about this one for a good long while. There was just so much to talk about. Each character had a really good story. A fun fact about me, I'm terrified of outer space. I'm like Aunt Judy from the Xenon movies on Disney. Like, you could not pay me enough money to go into space. I would never ever do that. This one was good. I really liked it. And if the premise of the book sounds interesting to you, I would recommend reading it. This next one I just read on my own, and it's the Nobody Wants Your The Art of Decluttering Before You Die by Marie Kondo. I really liked Marie Kondo's book, The Magic of Tidying Up. I read that one just after I finished college, and it kind of helped kickstart me just trying to be smarter with the things I bring into my life and how I take care of the stuff I have. I'm not a minimalist, but the approach that I have to my makeup is similar to the approach I have for all of the rest of my stuff. I'm gonna have to pick up the pace because I'm only on my foundation and I don't have that many more books to talk about. But if you're familiar with Marie Kondo's book, it's by a different author, so it's definitely just got a different vibe to it. It has a much more casual tone, and it had some helpful advice. But I've changed a lot over the years when it comes to buying things, so the tips maybe aren't as useful for me. I have a all-day blush stain from Wonderskin in the shade Whimsy. It's this really, really light baby pink with some purple to it. You don't need a lot of this. You need so little, actually, so be careful if you have any of these. I'm just gonna put a little bit, just like I apply the Rare Beauty blushes, I put a little bit on my finger and then I kind of dot. And I might go back and add a little bit more later, but just want to be careful not to overdo it. So to give a really oversimplified rundown of what the book is about, the premise is if you were to pass away suddenly and your loved ones needed to clean out your belongings? Would they be unnecessarily burdened with all the stuff you have, or would they be relieved that you have a straightforward plan on what to do with all of it? And that sort of extreme scenario helps to give perspective on how much you own and whether it helps you live the life you want now, or if it's just taking up space that will become someone else's problem someday. It was a good book, but like I said, I watch a lot of videos about this sort of thing. I've been actively trying to reduce clutter and be more mindful about what I have. So I can't really say that it gave me a new perspective or insight that I hadn't already considered, but the book did serve as just a good reminder. Okay, switching gears a little bit, the next book is His and Hers by Alice Feeney. This is a psychological thriller, and if you like this genre, you've likely read Alice Feeney books, or at least heard of her. His and Hers was a book club recommendation, and I ended up really liking it. I don't really like scary movies or anything like that, so I was surprised that I ended up really enjoying this book. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so glad to be in a book club with women who have very different preferences when it comes to reading, because I often end up really liking stuff I wouldn't have considered otherwise. And even if I don't love the book, it still teaches me something about my own preferences. For example, last October we read The Maidens by Alex Michaelides, which is also a thriller, and I enjoyed that one so much that I ended up reading his other two books, The Fury and The Silent Patient, right after, just on my own. But anyway, back to Alice Feeney. So there's a crime that occurs, and you're watching everything unfold while you're also trying to figure out who did it. So it's a whodunit type of setup. This book was genuinely interesting. I don't think I knew who it was until they revealed it at the end. It was very well done, and it was a really fun listen. So I listened to the audiobook version of this, and I really liked the voice actors that played the parts for this book. I would very much like to warn you ahead of time though, there are some genuinely dark parts of this book. Like, I'm sure there are trigger warnings for this book somewhere, so please do your research before you start reading it, because it does get surprisingly dark. And being an audiobook, there were some parts that were just really difficult to listen to. Just know that ahead of time. But like I said, I really enjoyed this. I ended up reading another one of her books right afterwards, just on my own, called Rock, Paper, Scissors. This one's also very good. It's not as dark as the first one. So if you want to still get to know her writing style, but you'd like to avoid some of those more sensitive scenes, then maybe this one's a better option. She has a lot of books out, so there's a lot to choose from. Rock, Paper, Scissors, I was genuinely surprised at the end. I'm not normally the one who can guess correctly early on, so I was expecting to be surprised, but even so, like, it really got me. Yeah, I think the same voice actors do all of the audiobooks that she's done, which is just another reason why I would be interested in listening to the rest of her books. Another audiobook that I listened to was from Dolly Parton. It was her book called Songteller. It's sort of like a memoir style book. It has a lot of chapters, but each individual chapter is really short. It's set up where each chapter kind of focuses on one song that she's written, and she kind of tells the story behind how that song came to be. And Dolly Parton is the narrator, so she's the one telling these stories. And I think I liked listening to the audiobook versus reading the book myself, because they would play little snippets of the song before each chapter, so you really got immersed into it. I'm gonna set my eyeshadow primer with just a matte shadow, and then I'm going to jump into trying that palette. I'm gonna grab that Drift shade and use a pretty big fluffy brush just to kind of run this along the crease, but make it like more blown out. So I actually suggested the book because two of the women in our group were due to have their first babies that month. And so I was just trying to find something that was maybe a little bit shorter, a little more lighthearted, especially since we had just finished that Alice Feeney book, which was more dark, like I mentioned. I think if you're aware of Dolly Parton, or if you like some of her songs, I think you'd enjoy it. But the more you know about Dolly Parton and maybe her history and her discography and background, I think you'll enjoy it even more. And it was nice. It was a pretty short book too. I think it was only like 5.5 hours. The main thing I wanted to talk about with this palette is this burgundy shade here, Horizon. is very patchy for me and it doesn't really build up that well. It's the only shadow I've worked with so far that I didn't like. The shimmers are gorgeous, but they are kind of glittery. So if you use a cleansing oil at the end of the day and you're rubbing it all around and you rinse that off, you might still have a few pieces of glitter around. A lot of my eyeshadows do that. In case that's something that really bothers you, I'd like you to know. I think I'm gonna put a little bit of Nebula, which is more of a purple, deeper matte on the outer thirds. This one I don't have as much trouble building up. I just went on a little trip recently and it involved going to a family wedding. And one of my favorite travel palettes is actually Desert Monsoon from What's Up Beauty. That palette I find I can create really beautiful, like soft glam looks, but there are some colorful shades too if I wanted to play that up a little bit too. And these shimmer shades definitely perform better with a glitter glue, so I'm gonna put that all over my lids. And then I'll take Borealis, put that on the outer half, and then Flare I'll put on the inner corner. And then for my crease, I'll go into Haze, which is that mid-toned purple color. I find when I work with really glittery shades like this, and I am eventually working them up into my crease, I like to go back afterwards with a mid-tone color, a mid-tone matte, to help blend and then also just add a little bit more color there. And then for my inner corner, I'm gonna grab Stars. I'll build up a little bit more of that burgundy shade on the outer corner to add some depth. And then I will talk about my final book in this list. This one was recommended to me by my mother-in-law. She gave me the book like a year ago and I never got around to actually reading it. So I wanted to finish it so that I could give it back to her. I don't remember if I gave you the book title yet, but it's Before the Coffee Gets Cold. It's a very popular book, so there's a chance you might be familiar with it even if you aren't an avid reader. And it's split into 4 stories about different people. And then as you read, you see how they each become a little bit more connected. There's a little bit of like a semi-time traveling element to it. And I'd like to read the rest of the books in the series. I think there's 4 more books after this. And it was nice. I don't know what you would categorize as like a beach read, but this does seem like something I would read on a beach trip, you know, something heartwarming. It's broken up into 4 pieces, so you could probably read like 1 a day. Yeah, I keep saying the word heartwarming, but it's really just the one word I can think of to describe. I have a few more, well, more than a few actually. I have quite a few books on my TBR list. I don't have a lot of physical books in my house that I haven't already read. Oh shoot, got mascara on my lid. Anyway, I keep track of what I'm reading on my little spreadsheet, mostly because I got a library card recently. And so the majority of the books that I'm reading, I either borrow from the library or through my library system. I have access to, I think, 5 titles through the Hoopla app. They they partnered together for that. So I think I get like 5 audiobooks a month included in that, which I love that that's offered to me. And I like to keep track of how much money I have saved by reading books through the library system without having to pay for them myself. And so far, since I've gotten my library card and started borrowing things, I think I joined October of last year. Since then, I've been able to save like $233 worth of books and audiobooks, where I would have purchased those myself to read them, but instead I was able to borrow them through the library system. We're gonna pretend that little mascara dot is not there. I'll remove it with a Q-tip once it's fully dried, but I'd like to finish with my lip. I don't know what color I wanna go with. I brought down a few options. So I have Naughty Talk, which is sort of a neutral, leaning peachy shade. I have Buxom Pink Crush, and it's part of their Dolly shade range. This one is more purple. I think it would probably match my eyeshadow best. And then I have Cocoa Bold from Too Faced in the shade Milkshade, which is more of a brown. I'll start with this lip liner. This is Mauve by LA Girl. It's their Shockwave lip liner. I really like the color. I do like creamy lip pencils on occasion. This one falls apart. Like, this pencil has broken and been unsalvageable probably 2 or 3 times. And I'm going through this so quickly as a result. That's a little frustrating. It, again, kind of keeps me from wanting to buy more creamy lip pencils. And I do have a lip stain on. I think what I'll do is I'll do a little bit of Cocoa Bold Milkshake and then add a layer of the Pink Crush shade just to add some more purple to it. You'll notice that a lot of the books that I talked about today were more contemporary or just more modern titles. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's all that I read. I do have on my list more nonfiction and just other genres that I'd like to dip my toes into. I don't imagine that I'll be doing this sort of video all the time, but I'd love to know what your thoughts are, especially if you have thoughts on these books, if you've read them too, or if you have any recommendations of books based on what I said I liked and didn't like. That would be very much appreciated. But yeah, if I were to do this video again, it likely wouldn't be until later this year. This isn't something I'm just gonna start doing like every month, but I'm hoping to have a more varied list of books that I've read in the next 6 months. I don't have any real goals of, trying to read a certain number of books in a year. I just kind of fall in and out of seasons where I have a lot of time and motivation to read, and then other times not so much. And so who knows how many books I'll have read by the end of this year. I think it's fun to just have a little chat about still talking about makeup, still talking about things that I've been reaching for recently and showing you how I like to do my makeup, and then also touching on some other things outside of makeup as well. If you did like this video, I'll have Amy's video just like this linked in the description box. Thanks to Amy for the idea. But in the meantime, that's everything I have. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!